Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into a really interesting document today. It's about what it means to serve in uniform here in Canada.
Right. It's from Canada.ca, titled Fighting Spirit, the Profession of Arms in Canada.
Exactly. And our mission for this deep dive is really to explore what this specific document says makes military service, well, different.
Defining it not just as any job, but as a unique profession.
Yeah, with its own set of demanding characteristics.
And the document itself lays it out pretty clearly.
It does. So we'll look at, how it defines profession generally, then how the Canadian military fits into that.
Focusing on things like its identity, its ethos.
How it interacts with the civilian government, which is crucial.
And how it keeps its standards up over time.
And this isn't just about, org charts or ranks.
No, definitely not.
It's about identity, values, responsibility. Huge responsibility.
Life and death sometimes.
Right. And the specific demands on people who choose this path. It helps you see how it stacks up or maybe differs from other professions you might know, like doctors or lawyers.
Absolutely. It gives you a kind of formal framework for understanding why it's seen less as just employment and more perhaps as a calling, with specific obligations.
Okay, so the document starts with the basics. What even is a profession? What's the core idea it puts forward?
Well, it talks about several characteristics, but it really zeroes in on something it calls the fundamental imperatives.
Fundamental imperatives, okay.
Yeah.
That sounds like the absolute bedrock.
It is, according to this source. They're presented as foundational, non-negotiable.
So what are they?
3 core things: character, competence, and commitment.
Character, competence, commitment.
Yeah, think of them as the pillars. Character is about, the moral and ethical side, integrity, courage, sticking to values.
Right.
Competence is having the skills, the knowledge, the abilities to actually do the job well, especially when the stakes are high.
Makes sense.
And commitment is that dedication.
Yeah.
To the profession itself, its values, and putting duty ahead of personal interests.
Okay, so it's not just about what you can do, it's about who you are and how dedicated you are. That sets a really high bar right away.
It does. And the document then builds on this. It talks about other professional attributes, specific traits that kind of flow from these imperatives.
Okay.
And one thing it really emphasizes again and again is trust.
Trust. Yeah, you mentioned that earlier.
Absolutely vital. Trust from the public, trust from the government, and maybe most importantly, trust within the ranks.
Within the profession itself.
Exactly. Without that mutual trust, especially in a crisis or combat, things can fall apart very quickly.
Does the document treat all professions the same way, using these terms?
It does acknowledge there are different types of professions, so there's variation, but its main goal here is to articulate how these elements combine uniquely to define the military profession.
Huh.
So it implies that while, say, doctors need character and competence too, the nature of those demands in the profession of arms is fundamentally different.
Which brings us right to that unique nature. How does the document talk about the emergence of the military profession in Canada? Was it always seen this way?
It outlines a bit of a historical shift. For a long time, Canada relied more on a citizen soldiering model.
Right, people serving part-time or just during wars.
Exactly, then returning to civilian life. But the document points to a trend, especially after World War II, towards more professionalization. Meaning developing a standing full-time force. Military service became a career, needing continuous, specialized training and fostering a distinct professional identity.
So less a temporary duty, more a permanent way of life and expertise.
Precisely.
And this professionalization led to what the document calls the Canadian profession of arms. How does it define that specifically today?
It defines it as this group, formally authorized by the state, who possess unique expertise, guided by a shared ethos, and crucially, entrusted with responsibility to organize, train, equip, and employ lethal force.
That's the core difference, isn't it? The lethal force aspect.
It's perhaps the most defining characteristic, employing lethal force in defense of Canada and its interests, but always under the direction of civilian authority.
That's a heavy mandate indeed. And you mentioned roles within this profession. The document distinguishes them.
Yes, it makes a useful distinction between military professionals and military dual professionals.
Okay, what's the difference there?
So, military professionals are those whose primary identity and expertise are purely within the military framework. Think infantry, pilots, sailors in their core roles.
Got it.
Then military dual professionals are military members who also hold a credential in a civilian profession. Military doctors, lawyers, engineers, chaplains.
Ah, so they have feet in both worlds in a way.
Exactly. They operate within the military system, but also adhere to the standards and ethics of their external civilian profession.
That's interesting. It shows the sheer breadth of expertise needed. The document then lays out 4 key attributes of this Canadian profession of arms. Let's break those down.
Absolutely. They really capture the essence. The first is military responsibility.
And that's huge, I imagine.
Enormous. It's about making incredibly complex decisions, often under pressure, with incomplete information.
Where the stakes are literally life and death.
For yourself, for your comrades, potentially for civilians. It's not just accountability for budgets. It's accountability for using force and for people's lives in dangerous situations.
Yeah, very few jobs carry that kind of weight day in, day out. What's the second attribute?
Military expertise. And the source is clear. This isn't just one thing. It points to different layers.
Layers? Like what?
Well, there's the core knowledge and competencies. Every member needs basic skills, understanding the culture, the chain of command.
The fundamentals.
Right. Then there's supporting knowledge, drawing from other fields, but adapted for military use. Think logistics, physics for ballistics, maybe cultural understanding for deployments.
Okay.
And finally, specialized knowledge. This is the deep technical stuff, piloting a jet, navigating a sub, complex field surgery, cyber warfare. A unique blend.
That makes the idea of expertise much richer. Okay, third attribute.
Military identity. This is that shared sense of purpose, of belonging, of being distinct that comes with service.
Shaped by the shared experiences.
Exactly. Tough training, shared risks, living closely, the uniform. It creates a strong bond forged by unique challenges.
And the fourth one, which the document seems to really focus on, is the military ethos. Feels like the moral compass.
It absolutely is presented that way. The Canadian Armed Forces ethos is described as the moral and ethical foundation.
Its function being
to provide that shared framework of values and beliefs. It guides conduct, especially in tricky ethical situations or under extreme pressure, ensuring actions align with Canadian values and professional standards.
How does it connect that specific military ethos to, broader Canadian values? Are they separate?
No, the document explicitly says the CF ethos is rooted in core Canadian values.
Like democracy, rule of law.
Democracy, rule of law, respect for human rights, diversity, respect for others, all those. The ethos isn't seen as separate. It's framed as the application of those national values within the specific context and demands of military service.
So translating abstract values into concrete expectations for soldiers, sailors, aviators.
Precisely.
And the document talks about internalizing the ethos. Why is just knowing it not enough?
Because knowing is passive. Internalizing means truly integrating those values into your personal moral code, your professional behavior, so they instinctively guide you, especially when you have to make split-second decisions under stress.
Ah, so it becomes part of who you are, how you react.
Exactly. The document argues this internalization is vital because it directly reinforces those fundamental imperatives we talked about earlier. It shapes character by strengthening moral resolve. It enhances competence by ensuring skills are used ethically. And it deepens commitment to the values you're serving. And crucially,
Let's rest again.
It builds that essential trust, internally, externally. Knowing your comrades share those same deep-seated values allows for that complete reliance on each other.
It really sounds like the ethos is the glue holding it all together, given the risks involved.
That's a good way to put it. It provides that moral framework for navigating danger and complexity.
Okay, speaking of navigating complexity, let's shift to how this profession interacts with the government. The source mentions civil-military relations.
A critical piece. The document underscores the principle of active civilian control.
Meaning the military reports to the elected government.
Absolutely. It's fundamental in a democracy. The military is subordinate. And it describes the interaction as an unequal dialogue.
Unequal dialogue. That's striking phrasing. What does it mean by that?
It signifies that while military leaders provide expert advice, highly specialized advice on defense, strategy, operations.
The best professional judgment.
Right. But the final decision-making authority rests firmly with the civilian leadership, the government.
So the military advises, the government decides.
Correct. The government considers the military advice alongside broader political, economic, social factors. It's not a negotiation between equals. The civilian side has the final say.
Makes sense for democratic accountability. The document also uses another term here, healthy tension.
Yes, it suggests a healthy tension is actually the ideal state for this relationship.
Tension sounds potentially bad?
Well, it's tension because the military's expert advice, grounded in their professional knowledge, which might include blunt truths about risks or capabilities.
Might be difficult for politicians to hear sometimes.
Exactly. Or it might clash with political goals. But it's healthy tension because that candid, expert advice is essential for informed government decisions. And civilian control ensures military power serves democratic purposes.
So the tension keeps both sides honest, in a way, ensures good advice and democratic oversight.
That's the idea, a delicate balance, properly managed.
And the document loops back to the fundamental imperatives here. Character, competence, commitment.
It does. It reinforces that they aren't just entry tickets. They actively shape how military expertise is used ethically, competently. They solidify the military identity, they animate the ethos, and they underpin military responsibility, both for individuals and the whole organization.
So they're woven through everything the profession does, like it's operational DNA.
You could definitely see it that way. They influence behavior and performance at every single level.
Given this demanding nature, the unique ethos, the complex relationship with the state, how does the profession keep itself on track? Maintain standards. Adapt. The source talks about self-regulation.
It calls self-regulation the engine of adaptation.
The engine.
Yeah. Unlike, say, lawyers with a bar association or doctors with a college, the military profession largely sets and enforces its own standards internally.
Covering what?
Everything from who gets in, how they're trained, ethical conduct, performance reviews, doctrine development. This internal mechanism is presented as vital for maintaining that unique character and expertise.
And for adapting quickly.
Exactly. Adapting to new threats, new technologies, changing societal expectations, without necessarily waiting for external bodies to dictate professional standards.
So how does this internal engine actually work? The document splits it into our people and our institution.
That's right. Sustaining through our people means things like good personnel management, recruiting the right folks, rigorous training, trying to keep experienced people.
Leadership, too.
Absolutely. Strong leadership at all levels is key to modeling and reinforcing the ethos and those imperatives. And continuous professional development, keeping skills sharp.
Okay, that's the people side. What about the institutional part?
That's our institution.
Yeah.
This covers the formal structures, policies and programs that govern things like training standards, discipline, careers, how operations are run.
The rule book, essentially.
In part.
Yeah.
But it also crucially includes preserving and teaching, history, heritage, and traditions.
Why are they so important for sustaining the profession?
They provide context. They reinforce that shared identity we talked about. They offer lessons from the past, successes, and failures. And they're a primary way the ethos and values get transmitted across generations.
So the stories, the symbols, the ceremonies, they're not just for show.
According to this document, they are vital tools. They help sustain the professional culture and identity. They're fundamental to passing down what it means to be part of this profession.
Okay, so we've walked through this document, Fighting Spirit. We've looked at its definition of a profession, how it sees the Canadian military fitting that, with unique attributes like responsibility, expertise, identity, and that core ethos.
We explored the crucial yet unequal relationship with civilian authority.
That healthy tension.
Right. Yeah. And how the profession aims to sustain itself through self-regulation, focusing on both its people and its institutional foundations.
So for you listening, hopefully you've got a clearer picture now, based on this official perspective, of what the profession of arms in Canada really means.
Yeah, it frames military service as much more than just a job. It's presented as a distinct way of life, defined by unique values, immense responsibilities, and that strong sense of identity.
Absolutely. It really highlights that specific agreement, that compact between the state, the Canadian public, and those who volunteer to serve.
Which leaves us with a really interesting thought to chew on.
Go on.
Well, the document really emphasizes two potentially competing ideas. Active civilian control. The government has the final say via that unequal dialogue. And the profession's need for self-regulation to maintain its unique standards and adapt.
So external direction versus internal professional integrity and adaptation.
Exactly. So the question for you to consider is, how do you think that dynamic, that constant interplay between outside direction and internal professional standards and values shapes the day-to-day reality and the long-term evolution of the Canadian military profession?
It's a complex balance to strike, for sure.
Definitely something to think about.